Imini yesabatha ibenhle kwabangcwele. Zovula ngehlabelelo 134 Inkosi kusephama kwebanga. Inkosi kubusise wenceku yenkosi Asibonge. Amen. Ihloko salenkonzo sithi Ubani Inkosi Yamanazaretha.
Amen.
Today's topic says, who is the God of the Nazarites?
Ngaphambi kokuba ngiqhubeke nalokho ngizochaza kafuphi ngalesi sihlabelelo ekade sihlabelele.
Before I continue with that, I will briefly explain about the hymn that we have just sang.
Yezwakala. Ibandla laManazaretha libandla elisimangaliso ngoba libandla lingafani nabandla elake labakhona emhlabeni.
The Nazarite Church is a different congregation amongst others, for it is a congregation that has never existed before.
Mhlawumbe laba khona ngezikhathi zoMose angazi ukuthi kwakuhamba kanjani.
Perhaps it existed during the time of Moshe, but I do not know how it was carried out or proceeded.
La ebandleni laManazaretha abantu abazi ukuthi kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi kusuke ingilose ezulwini zohlala nabantu.
Within the congregation of the Nazarites, people do not understand how it is possible that an angel may descend from heaven and live amongst a people.
Lesi sihlabelelo sithi saqanjwa umprofeti uIzashembe kodwa siqanjwa nganguye.
We usually say that this hymn was composed by the prophet Isaiah Shembe, but he was not the one who composed it.
Lesi sihlabelelo safika nengilosi noma nezithunywa zasezulwini.
It was brought by an angel, or perhaps I could say divine beings.
ngenkathi singakahlali nengilosi ngangazi ukuthi lento yayenzeka kanjani.
Before living with the angel, before we lived with the angel, I did not know how this was possible.
Kodwa manje sengiqonda kahle.
But now I clearly understand it.
Kubhaliwe ukuthi kwakusemangethe umbaba mkhulu esehlane eshumayela kwase kufika lo mthandazo.
It is written here that it was at the place of Mangete and the prophet was in the wilderness, and then this is the prayer that descended upon him.
La owayethandaza kwangayena ubaba mkhulu mayethi Inkosi busise wencebe Inkosi kwakusho ingilosi eyayihamba naye.
It was not the prophet who was praying when it says here, God bless you, servant of God, but it was the angel that was with the prophet.
Lengilosi lena yaye ibuka usizi ubaba mkhulu okulona ihamba naye.
This angel was seeing the difficulties that the prophet was experiencing.
Njengamanje sinihlabelelo mhlambe ezintathu ezaqanjwa ingilosi kuleli bandla.
Currently we have 3 hymns that were composed by the angel within this congregation.
Kodwa ngeke kushiye ukuthi lezi ihlabelelo zaqanjwa ingilosi noma kubhaliwe kodwa zaqanjwa yimi.
But it will not be said that these hymns were composed by the angel, though that is written down. They will say that they were composed by me.
Ngoba abakholwa ukuthi ingilosi iyasiqamba ihlabelelo.
Because they do not believe that an angel can compose a hymn.
Kodwa thina siyazi ngoba ingilosi yayiqamba lezi ihlabelelo sikhona.
But we know because the angel composed these hymns in our presence.
Na lesi hlabelelo ke 134 saqanjwa ingilosi ehamba nobaba mkhulu imcelela inhlanhla yokuthi ehambe kahle.
Likewise, this hymn, the hymn 134th hymn, was composed by the angel, and the angel was wishing the prophet luck.
Lokho ngisho ngoba ngiyangibone ukuthi ingilosi iyayenza njani kithi.
I say that because I know how the angel behaves towards us.
Uma isithuma senza kahle iyajabula.
If she instructs us to do something and we carry out the task properly, she rejoices.
Uma sibane inkinga iphatheka kabi.
And when we have problems, she is saddened by that.
Ingilosi iyayithandaze phambi kwethu isicelela inhlanhla usheme.
The angel prays before us, praying for luck and fortune to the prophet.
So uma ingilosi lapha ithi Inkosi kubusise wencebe yenkosi siqonda kahle thina ukuthi ingilosi iyathandaza ithandazele umuntu esuke ihamba naye ukuthi yonke into yenzayo iphumelele.
So if it says here, as it is written here, God bless you, O servant of God, we clearly understand that an angel prays for a person so that anything or any task that is instructed is carried out successfully.
Kodwa njengamanje leli iculo alisaqondene nobaba mkhulu liqondene nathi.
But currently this hymn is not directed to the prophet, but it is directed to us.
Ukhona into nje ingilosi eke yayisho kimi ekseni anganoma ekseni ichaza ukuthi ijabula kanjani ngendlela esishumayela ngayo.
There is something that the angel said to me this morning, expressing how happy she is regarding how we are preaching the word of God.
Kodwa ke angizukusho konke ekushilo.
But I'm not going to speak about everything that she said.
Kodwa engiqonda ukusho ukuthi uma ngabe ushumayela ebandleni laManazaretha uthunywa uNkulunkulu kuyakhishwe ingilosi ehamba nawe ekuguidayo kuzo zonke izinto uyibone.
But what I intend to say is that within the Nazarite faith, whenever you are instructed to preach the word of God, an angel is sent to to assist you, and it is a physical being that you see.
Hayi ukuthi into ikholwayo noma into ebona ngesibonakaliso cha iyahamba nje nani noma ingabonwa yibo bonke abantu.
It is not something that you just believe in or you witness through visions, but it is something that you see physically, though other people cannot experience that.
Umoya unjalo ke, umoya uyakhetha noma ufuna ukubona noma ufuna ukubona. Ungafika lapha phakathi kwethu ukhulume nomuntu othize singawuboni thina.
And such is the behavior of any spirit. A spirit chooses whether it wants you to witness it through seeing it or not. And a spirit can come amongst us and speak to someone, but we might not necessarily see it.
Njengamanje na ke emhlabeni wonke into enjalo yenzeka ebandleni laManazaretha.
And currently we are the only congregation that is experiencing such a thing.
Kodwa nakuManazaretha kwenzeka lapha kuphela.
But even within the Nazarites, it is only happening within amongst us only.
Ngomanya kwamanye amabandla kuyiphupho ukuthi ingilosi ihlala kanjani abantu.
And in other factions, it is just a dream as to how an angel would live amongst a people.
Baningi abantu phakathi kwethu abasanda ukukholwa belandela lenkonzo.
There are many people amongst us who are new converts within this congregation.
Kodwa ngeke ngifise kube ngaso sonke isikhathi kube khona into ehlala kuwo wonke umuntu oba ileli lenkonzo.
But I always wish that there is something that they hold steady to if they are converts to this congregation or faith system.
Ngoba uma lokho bengakuqondi kunamaphutha amaningi abazowenza.
Because if they do not have a clear understanding of that, then there are many transgressions that they are going to do.
Leli bandla akulona ibandla lasemhlabeni, ibandla lasezulwini.
This congregation is not an earthly congregation, but it is divine.
Ngiyaye ngisho ngithi kwafika ingilosi kithi khona la ekhaya yasitshela ukuthi ithunywe uShembe ubaba ilanga ukuthi simakhele yena, simakhele ibandla likaJehova.
And I always say that an angel came to us in this very place and said to us that she has been sent by Shembe II, and Shembe II is instructing us to build for him a house of God.
Ngakho ke leli bandla ngelika Shembe ubaba ilanga sakhele yena, ngamanye amazwi siqhuba izinhloso zakhe ngaleli bandla.
And so therefore this congregation belongs to Shembe II, and in other words, we are fulfilling his wishes through this church.
Imandate yethu esinikezwe ubaba ilanga ukuthi kuleli bandla asishumayele indaba kaJehova.
And the mandate that has been given to us is that we should pronounce the good news of Yahweh.
Sifundisa abantu ukuthi uJehova ukhonzwa kanjani.
And teach people how God is worshipped.
Sifundise abantu umthetho kaJehova.
And teach people the laws of God.
Imandate yethu leyo.
And that is our mandate.
Okwesibili, uma sifundisa abantu ngendaba kaJehova, lokho sikuthathele ezimfundisweni zomprofeti umqali wendlela yalobu uNazaretha.
Secondly, in teaching people, we must teach them from the teachings of the prophet, who is the founder of this faith system.
Silandele indlela ubaba mkhulu owaye eshumayela ngayo noma efundisa ngayo amaNazaretha angaleso sikhathi.
And we should follow the manner in which the prophet was preaching or teaching to the Nazarites of that era or his era.
Lokho kufanele ukuthi ngikuchaze ngoba namhlanje na sisesikhumbuzweni sikababa mkhulu.
I need to explain that for today we are gathered to commemorate the prophet.
Ikhona njena ngibeke isithombe sakhe la.
And that is why I have his photo next to me.
Sifundiswe noma si-instructwe ukuthi imfundiso kaJehova siyithathele kulo muntu ubaba mkhulu.
and we have been taught that we should take our teachings from his teachings
bese sifundisa ngayo abantu.
and then teach it to all people.
Ngamanye amazwi leli bandla livuselela ibandla likababa mkhulu ngendlela owaye eshumayela ngayo esesemhlabeni.
In other words, this congregation is reviving the congregation of the prophet in the same manner in which he was preaching whilst he was still alive.
Ekuqaleni ngithena isihloko salentshumayelo sithi Ubani Inkosi Yamanazaretha.
I said before at the beginning of this sermon, who is the God of the Nazarites?
Ngiyinzalo yaleli bandla laManazaretha.
I was born within this faith system.
Ubaba mkhulu akakaze ebe nayo ititle yokuthi uyinkosi.
And the prophet has never had to him a title of him being a king.
No baba ilanga akazange waba netitle yokuthi uyinkosi.
The case was the same with Shemba II.
No baba inyanga izulu akazange waba netitle yokuthi uyinkosi.
Likewise with Shemba III.
Ukuthi uShembe uyinkosi lapha kwiside lethu kuqale ngoThingo.
Saying that or referring to Shemba as a king started from our faction with Shemba IV.
Kwasekulandela kwasekuba yilaba abanye ke oShemba bakhona nabanye abangasekho.
And then the others followed suit.
Kodwa ubaba ilanga akakaze ebe netitle yokuthi uyinkosi.
But Shemba II has never had to him a title attached to him as king.
Ngoba ebandleni laManazaretha ayikho ititle yokuthi umholi uyinkosi.
For within the faith system of the Nazarites, we do not have a title that is attached to a person as king.
uNkulunkulu akayaze eyenze aze eyisho into enjalo.
And God has never said anything of that nature.
Lapha sinabaprofeti, lapha sibe naba high priest.
We have here prophets and high priests.
Asinayo ititle yokuthi inkosi.
We do not have a title that is king.
Ubaba inyanga ezulu kwahamba ngenkathi seku involve lapha le khona kwaba involve ilokhoza inhlangano yamakholwa okuthiwa no inhlangano le yo Bishop Tutu. The South African Council of Churches. Kwathi mase kune South African Council of Churches usihlalo wako ku Bishop Mkwena. Wayesethi uBishop Mkwena ubaba inyanga ezulu akabizwe kuthiwa uBishop.
The Shemba III was regarded or given the title by the chairperson of the South African Council of Churches as bishop, and that chairperson was Reverend Mpanza.
Sakuvuma ke lokho ngoba izinto eziningi thembele kuyo South African Council of Churches.
And we agreed to that, for we had entrusted many other things to the South African Council of Churches.
Kodwa mina ngingedwa nje leyo nto yokuthi ubaba inyanga ezulu uBishop ayizange yangijabulisa.
But I as an individual did not accept that.
Kodwa ubaba mkhulu nobaba ilanga abakaze bebizwe kuthiwa ababishop ngoba ayikho ititle enjalo kuleli bandla.
But the prophet and Shemba II have never been referred as bishops, for such a title does not exist within this faith system.
Ubaba ilanga ngisho ebhala yena wayebhala ukuthi Reverend J.G. Shembe.
And whenever Shemba II would write letters, he would title himself as Reverend J.G. Shembe.
Kodwa manje bonke abaholi bamaNazaretha babizwa kuthiwa amakhosi as titles.
But all other Nazarite faith leaders are now regarded as kings, as titles.
Ukuthi umuntu uyinkosi noma imuphi umuntu uyakwazi ukusho ukuthi uyinkosi akusho lutho lokho.
saying that someone is a king is a term that can be used by anyone.
Kodwa khona abantu ababa amakhosi by virtue of isikhundla sakhe other than umsebenzi noma umphumela womsebenzi owenzile.
But there are other people who are regarded as kings by virtue of the position that they hold, despite any outcomes of a work that they have carried out.
Bonke abaholi besizwe babebizwe ukuthi bangamakhosi immediately ehlala ehlalweni.
All people who are leaders of nations are regarded as kings immediately as they take on their kingship.
Not as Baba amakhosi, don't interpret that. Baba amakhosi behola ama tribes abo.
They become kings when they become amakhosi when they lead their tribes.
La kwaZulu asinawo amakhosi aswabuze ukuthi ama kings ngaphandle kwengonyama kuphela.
We do not refer to amakhosi as kings apart from the king.
Indaba endekeleyo ngangikhona idingidwa ngise udirector wamakhosi.
And that was a complicated matter, and I was part of it when it was being delivered out.
Ngakho ke ayikho inkinga ukuthi amakhosi akwaZulu ibizwe ukuthi amakhosi ngoba ititle yawo esemthethweni.
And there is no problem when the chiefs of the KwaZulu people are regarded as chiefs, for that is a legal title.
Kodwa isikhathi esiningi umuntu uyayibizwe ukuthi uyinkosi ngomsebenzi wawo wakhe ovelele oqalwe uyena.
But usually someone is called a chief when they have done something spectacular that they were the ones who initiated.
Not a chief, a king.
A king.
Sibe no nama kings erigay njengo Bob Marley.
And we have kings that are kings of reggae like Bob Marley.
Lawo ma kings kuye kuthiwa umuntu uyi kings ngoba evelele ekwakheni leyo nto.
And they are regarded as kings for they have done something spectacular within what they were doing.
Kodwa lokho kubizwa ngakho ukuthi king kusuke kungayiyo illegal title yokuthi uyi king.
But that referral as king is not a legal title attached to them.
Lapha ebandleni laManazaretha bonke abantu abangabaholi siyesibabize ukuthi amakhosi ngokuhlonipha.
Within this Nazarite faith we refer to all leaders as kings in respecting them.
Kodwa hayi ukuthi bangamakhosi ngempela.
But it is not because they are really kings.
Kodwa sekuyisimangaliso manje ukuthi bonke abantu abangabaholi sebevele bebe ngamakhosi noma ama kings angazi ngokwe title yabo.
But it is surprising that all people who become leaders now have to them the title of king.
Nami ngenkathi ngiba umholi waleli bandla ngake ngabuza engilosini ukuthi akufanele ningibize ukuthi ngiyinkosi.
And when I started leading this church, I asked the angel whether I should be regarded as a king.
Yathi ingilosi cha ungavumi ukuthi uyinkosi thani umfundisi ugcine lapho.
And the angel said, no, you should not allow people to refer to you as a king, but you should be known as a priest.
Yathi ingilosi uma uthi uyinkosi kuzobukeka sengathi uyalingisa.
And the angel said that if you refer to yourself as king, it will be seen as if you are mimicking someone else.
Ngoba laba abathi bangamakhosi bayalingisa.
For those who refer to themselves as kings are mimicking.
Hayi ukuthi ubukhosi babo bakheke kutheni khona into ebalekile abayenza.
It is not that they are kings because they have done something important.
Kodwa umuntu kuleli bandla owenza into okufanele ukuthi ebe inkosi ubaba mkhulu.
But the person who should be regarded as a king within this faith system is the prophet because of the things that he did.
Ubaba mkhulu wayesho kubaba ilanga ukuthi inkosi, esho nakubaba inyanga ezulu ukuthi inkosi bese abantwana bakhe.
The prophet would refer to Shembe II and Shembe III as kings whilst they were still his children.
Kodwa lokho bukhosi okwakuchaza ubaba mkhulu akukhona lobu bukhosi osekuchazwa amadodana abo.
But the kingship that the prophet was speaking about is not the one that his progeny is talking about.
Ngake ngachaza ukuthi la emhlabeni ubaba ilanga nobaba inyanga ezulu bazalwa ubaba mkhulu.
I did explain that here on earth both Shembe II and Shembe III are children of the prophet.
Kodwa ezulwini abazalwa ubaba mkhulu bangamadoda nje ayimele.
But in heaven they are not the children of the prophet, they are individual people.
Ezulwini mangibuza engilosini ngoba ivame ukuba ikhulume izinto ezixakile ngobaba mkhulu. Ngathi mangibuza ukuthi ubani omkhulu phakathi kwababa mkhulu no baba ilanga yangichazela enye into.
And when I inquired of the angel who is greater in heaven between the prophet and Shembe II, she explained something to me.
Yathi ingilosi lapha emhlabeni umuntu omkhulu ubaba mkhulu.
She said that here on earth the greater person is the prophet.
Ngoba ubuNazaretha bakhiwa ubaba mkhulu.
For he is the one who built this Nazarite faith.
Ngenkathi uNkulunkulu efuna ukwakha ubuNazaretha wathuma ubaba mkhulu.
When God wanted to revive the Nazarite faith, he sent the prophet.
Yathi ungalokothi uqhathanise ubaba ilanga nobaba mkhulu ngobukhosi bakhe kobuNazaretha.
And she said that you should not even dare you should compare the prophet and Shembe II in their kingship.
Yayisithi kodwa izikhulu zasezulwini azihlangene nokwaziwa yini ukuthi zimi kanjani.
But she said that you have no business in understanding the different positions that the prophets hold in heaven.
Kodwa la emhlabeni Inkosi Yamanazaretha ubaba mkhulu.
But here on earth the king of the Nazarites is the prophet.
Ngelinye ilanga ingilosi yasitshela ukuthi ubaba ilanga wathi sina esensizwa ubaba mkhulu wayehleli abelungu basebembuza ukuthi lo mntwana uzalwa uwe kanjani ngoba isikhumba sakhe asibukeki ewumuntu omnyama kahle.
One day the angel told us that as Shembe II was in the holy dance, the white people asked the prophet, "How is he your child? For his skin complexion does not look like an African's complexion."
Impendulo kababa mkhulu yathi phela uNkulunkulu umuntu umnikeza isikhumba esithandwa nguNkulunkulu.
And his response was that God gives to a person any type of skin that he wants.
Ithi ke ingilosi wayeseqhubeka ubaba mkhulu ithi kodwa lo mntwana akusiyena owakwaShembe kodwa ngowakithi.
And the angel said that the prophet continued by saying that this child is not of the Shembe family, but he belongs to my family.
Ithi-ke ingilosi badideka abelungu ukuthi usho ukuthini ubaba mkhulu mayethi lo mntwana akusiyena owakwaShembe kodwa owakithi.
And the angel said that the white people were confused when the prophet said that this child is not of the Shembe family, but he's from my family.
Lokho ubaba mkhulu wayechaza ngokuthi ubaba mkhulu nobaba ilanga bangabasezulwini.
And the prophet was explaining through that both him and Shembe II are divine people.
Ike yakhuluma ingilosi yathi ubaba ilanga yathi uShembe ungwakubo kwaNkulunkulu. Yabeka kanje.
And the angel said that Shembe is of the family of God.
Uthi kodwa abantu bakwaShembe abakwazi lokho bacabanga ukuthi ungwakubo.
But the Shembe people, Shembe family do not understand that. They think that Shembe belongs to their family.
Ngelinye ilanga ngiyochaza kakhulu ngalencazelo esayinikezwa ingilosi ukuthi uShembe ungwakubo kwaNkulunkulu ukuthi kusho ukuthini lokho.
One day I will explain to you what the angel meant by saying that Shembe belongs to the family of God.
Lokho kwasuka uma ngibuza ukuthi kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi umndeni wakwaShembe uhlupheke kanje kodwa unoShembe umholi waleli bandla.
And that came about as a result of the question that I posed to the angel when I asked her, how is it possible that the Shembe family are a poor people whilst Shembe is from their side, from their family in flesh?
Ithike ingilosi lokho kudalwa ukuthi umndeni wakwaShembe awazi ukuthi uShembe akusiyeni wakubo.
And the angel said that is as a result of them not knowing that Shembe does not belong to their family.
Ithi uShembe bambuka kuyise nje.
They just look at Shembe as their father.
Ithi ngisho bekhuluma naye bayebemshisela impepho.
Even when they talk to him, they burn incense.
Ithi bonke laba bantu umndeni wakwaShembe ngeshwa awazi lutho ngokukholwa. uShembe usiza nina ngoba nina niyamazi ukuthi uShembe uvela ezulwini.
And the angel said, unfortunately, these people do not know nothing about this faith. And Shembe always comes to your aid, for you understand that he is a heavenly being.
But
the Shembe family do not understand that. They just think that he is their father. They think that he may come to their aid as their father. But he is very distant from that, for he belongs to God or is of God. And people who can get assistance or help from Shembe are people who understand that Shembe is from heaven.
Engizama ukuchaza ke ukuthi uShembe ubaba mkhulu Inkosi Yamanazaretha akusiyona into ewumbono wami.
Essentially what I'm saying is that when I say the prophet is the king of the Nazarites, it's not something that comes from me. It is not my opinion.
Kodwa kuyimfundiso kababa ilanga ngomprofeti.
But it is the teaching that comes from Shembe II regarding the prophet.
Leonto uyoyifunda kakhulu uma uzofunda lencwadi ka advocate Mnyandu ethi izintshumayelo zika baba ilanga.
And you will read that in depth when you read the book written by Mnyandu titled The Preachings of Shembe II.
Thina njengebandla lika baba ilanga siyaphoqeleka ukuthi sifundisise izimfundiso zika baba ilanga ngobuNazaretha, sifundisise izimfundiso zika baba ilanga ngoNkulunkulu uJehova, sifundisise izintshumayelo kababa ilanga ngobaba mkhulu.
As a congregation that belongs to Shembe II, we are compelled to read his teachings about the Nazarite faith, about God and the prophet.
Ekhasini 82 yale ncwadi kaMnyandu nanga amazwi kababa ilanga.
In the 82nd page of this book, these are the words of Shembe II.
uShembe lo owaphemba lobu buNazaretha wayengesiye umuntu wayevela ezulwini.
The Shembe who found this Nazarite faith was not a person, he was a divine being.
Inkulumo kababa ilanga leyo.
And that is what Shembe II said.
Kodwa wayengaqala ukufika lapha emhlabeni.
But it was not his first time coming here onto earth.
Wayefika ayiphembe lento esibuthene ngayo ayishiye acabange ukuthi izosala ilunge.
He would create this faith system thinking that it would proceed properly after him.
Bese emva kwakhe kuvela abantu abanjengami nje abaye bathi bangabaholi bengenawo umoya kaShembe.
And they would appear people like me after him who title themselves as leaders, though they do not have the spirit of Shembe.
Uma ungasubhekisisa manje na abaholi bakwaShembe bazi ukuthi bangabaholi ngesibongo sakwaShembe.
And if you were to clearly consider what is happening now, these leaders who lead the Nazarites consider themselves as leaders by virtue of their surname.
Kodwa ubaba ilanga uthi abantu babethi bangabaholi njengami ngoba ngingowakwaShembe kodwa bengenawo umoya kaShembe.
But if you listen properly, he said that these people said that they are leaders, but they do not have the spirit of Shembe.
Bese bayayiphambukisa lento sebeyiphendula ngobuthakathaka babo.
And they lead this faith system astray in accordance to their weaknesses.
Lento isifundisa into enkulu ngokuthi ukuba umholi wakwaShembe kudinga ukuthi ube nomoya kaShembe, hayi ukuthi ube isibongo sakwaShembe.
What this teaches us is that if you are to become a leader of this Nazarite faith, you need to have the spirit of Shembe with you. You are not required to be a Shembe in terms of surname.
Ubaba mkhulu wa adopta umama wayesethi lo mntwana uyozala abantwana abothi bengayibaba kwaShembe ngesibongo kodwa bebe nomoya kaShembe.
My mother was adopted by the prophet, and the prophet said that this child would give birth to children who, though they do not belong under the Shembe family in flesh, but they will have the spirit of Shembe with them.
Angazi noma nginawo umoya kaShembe.
I do not know whether I have the spirit of Shembe.
Kodwa isenzo esizosho ukuthi lo muntu unomoya kaShembe akumina kufanele ngizisho ukuthi nginomoya kaShembe.
But it is the behavior which will explain which will showcase whether I have the spirit of Shembe. I'm not the one who should pronounce it.
Uma ngabe engifundisa khona kuyilokho okufunwa ubaba mkhulu okusho ukuthi umoya kaBaba mkhulu uhlale kimi.
If I teach you what the prophet wants me to teach, that means that the spirit of the prophet is with me.
Uma ngifundise lokhu okufunwa uJehova okusho ukuthi umoya kaShembe uhlale kimi.
If I've taught to you what Yahweh wants, it means that the spirit of Shembe is with me.
Ngakho ke angikwazi ukuthi ngithi nginomoya kaShembe by virtue of the fact ukuthi ubaba mkhulu wathi umama uyozala izingane ezinomoya kaShembe bese ngikuclaima lokho.
So I cannot say that I have the spirit of Shembe by virtue of the fact that the prophet said that my mother would give birth to children who would have the spirit of Shembe. I cannot claim that.
Kodwa kufanele kubonakale ngezenzo ukuthi lo muntu ngempela umoya kaShembe wangena kuye. Akube izenzo ezisho njalo, hayi mina.
but it should be seen through the things that I do. I should not be the one who pronounces that.
So sifundiswa ubaba ilanga ukuthi umuntu oba umholi waleli bandla kodwa engenawo umoya kaShembe lento uyayibhidlisa.
So we have been taught by Shembe II that if a person does not have the spirit of Shembe with them, he destroys this faith system.
Ku page 168 ubaba ilanga wakhuluma lamazwi ngobaba mkhulu.
In the 168th page, these are the words that were spoken by Shembe II regarding the prophet.
uShembe wayengahambi yedwa unjengalomuntu esifunde ngawo lapha esho Enoch wayehamba noNkulunkulu isikhathi sonke.
Shembe was not alone when he journeyed, just like the person that we read about who is Enoch, but he was with God all the time.
Nizwile ukuthi ingilosi ithena ingilosi uShembe ngwakubo kaNkulunkulu.
And did you hear what the angel said? She said that Shembe is of God.
Ubaba ilanga uthi uShembe wayehamba noNkulunkulu.
And Shembe II said that the prophet journeyed with God.
Futhi engakufihli lokho noma kufanele ukuba akufihle angakufihli.
And he did not hide that away, though he was required to do so at times, but he did not.
Usho njalo ubaba ilanga uthi ubaba mkhulu ngoba igama elithi Shembe uShembe igama lika baba mkhulu. Uthi ke ubaba mkhulu waye ehamba noNkulunkulu futhi engakufihli ukuthi uhamba noNkulunkulu.
And it says here that the prophet journeyed with God, and he did not hide that this name Shembe is a title that belongs to the prophet.
Njengoba nathi asikufihli ukuthi sihamba nengilosi.
As we do not hide that we are journeying with an angel.
Ngoba kuliqiniso.
For it is true.
Kodwa ngeke sithi sihamba noNkulunkulu ngoba sikaze simbone noma ekhona sikholwa lokho. Kodwa ukuthi sihamba nengilosi akusikhona ukukholwa ukwazi.
And we cannot say that we journey with God, for we have never necessarily seen him, but we have seen the angel, and we do not believe that we know it.
Uyaqhubeka ubaba ilanga ku page 81 uthi kodwa ukuphakama lobo akusikho okwenu akusikho futhi okaShembe lo obonwayo.
And he continues by saying in the 81st page that this faith of Ekpagameni does not belong to you, and it does not belong to the Shembe that you can see, but it belongs to the Shembe that is heavenly.
okukaNkulunkulu okukaShembe osezulwini okukaShembe owakuqalayo lokhu kuhamba.
It belongs to God, it belongs to the Shembe who is in heaven, it belongs to the Shembe who found this faith.
Ngosobala ngokwemfundiso kababa ilanga ubuNazaretha ngokababa mkhulu ngoba uShembe owayesezulwini ngenkathi kukhuluma ubaba ilanga kwakubaba mkhulu futhi uShembe owaqala lobuNazaretha ubaba mkhulu.
And in accordance to what Shembe II was saying is that this Nazarite faith system belongs to the prophet. For the Shembe that was in heaven at the time of Shembe II was the prophet, and it was he who found this faith.
Lento kufanele ukuthi nina niyazi kahle niqonde kahle.
And you should clearly understand this.
Uyaqhubeka ubaba ilanga ku page 230 uthi sizobhubha sonke sihambe emhlabeni.
In the 230th page, he continues to say that we are one day going to perish from this earth.
Kodwa uShembe akagugi.
But Shembe does not age.
Akafi futhi.
He does not die as well.
Thina uma sesilele emathuneni uShembe yena uyobe emusha njalo nje.
When we lay in our graves, this Shembe will always be new.
Njengoba namanje engagugile.
Just as he has not aged.
Njengoba namanje elokhu emusha nje.
as he's continually new to this day.
Uthi ke ubaba ilanga namuhla usakhuluma lapha kwaZulu kuphela.
And the Shembe II says here, today he's only proclaiming these news within KwaZulu.
Kodwa kuza isikhathi lapho ezokhuluma naseNdiya, ekhulume naseNew York eAmerica kubelungu.
But there is coming a time where he will speak in India and in New York in the Americans amongst the white people.
Niyamuzwa babilanga ukuthi uthini? Uthi okwamanje usakhuluma lapha kwaZulu. Kodwa kuza isikhathi lapho uzokhuluma eIndia, kuza isikhathi lapho uzokhuluma eNew York eAmerica.
Currently, do you hear what Shembe II is saying? He's saying that currently Shembe is only speaking within the limitations of KwaZulu, but there is coming a time where he will speak in India and in New York in the Americans.
Uma ubaba ilanga ethi uShembe uyokhuluma eIndia ekhulume eAmerica. Hayi ukuthi kokwehla uShembe ekhulume kumaAmerica. Kohamba thina siyoshumayela eAmerica. NgoShembe ukuthi uShembe usifundiseni ngoJehova.
When he says that Shembe will speak in the Americans and in India, he was not saying that he will descend and speak to them, but he was saying that we are going to travel to these nations and speak about what the prophet taught about Yahweh.
Ngasho ekuqaleni ngathi ingilosi yathi thina asibe isibonelo sokuthi ubuNazaretha kuyoba njani mase kugcwele emhlabeni.
I did say before that the angel said that we must showcase an example of how the Nazarite faith will be when it spreads onto the whole world.
Yathi hayi ukuthi ngithi khumulani amabheshu nedwaba ngoba ubaba mkhulu waye wrong kodwa ubaba mkhulu wayesashumayela kwaZulu.
And she said that I'm not saying that you should take off the skin hides that you wear because the prophet was wrong. But I'm saying that because the prophet at the time was only speaking within the limitations of KwaZulu.
Yathi ngilosi kodwa mina ngithunywe ukuthi ubuNazaretha ngikugcwalise umhlaba wonke. Ngani?
And she said that I have been mandated to fill this Nazarite faith onto the whole world through you.
Ithi ke ingilosi abantu bomhlaba fanele bebuke kini ukuthi ubuNazaretha koba into enjani. Ningakufaki esizweni esithize kodwa kube isimo sasezulwini ukuthi umuntu eNazaretha uyoba njani ukuze engene ezulwini.
And the angel said that people must see this from you as to how the Nazarite faith will be when it fills the whole world. It must take on the condition of heaven. It must take on the fashion of heaven.
Yathi kuphela into ofanele uyibheke ukuthi noma yini eniyenza ukuthuthukisa ubuNazaretha ingaphambani nomthetho kaNkulunkulu.
And she said that what you should be cautious of is that in developing the Nazarite faith, you do not do anything that transgresses against the laws of God.
Uyaqhubeka ke ubaba ilanga uthi ukuba lencwadi yakhe ubaba mkhulu nayiloba ngabe abelungu bafika ebusuku nasemini bezofuna ukuthi amathambo alomuntu nawabekaphi.
And he continues by saying that if you had written a book about him, people would come from all over the earth to see where we placed the remains of this person.
Ibhanti ayelembatha nalenze njani?
What you did with the coat that he wore.
Necansi ayelala kulo liphi?
And the grass mat that he slept on, where is it?
Ibhlungu leyo nto uma ikhulunywa ubaba ilanga.
And it is painful that such a thing should be spoken by Shembe II.
Ngoba uma ungasufune manje ukuthi imoto ehamba ubaba ilanga iphi uyifica ichingiwe nje akunamsebenzi nayo.
Because if you were to question as to where is the car that Shembe II used, you will find that it has been disowned.
Kodwa ukube singabantu abahlakaniphile imoto ehamba ubaba ngabe ikumuseum wethu.
But if we were intelligent people, we would have had our own museum and kept it.
Ngoba imoto eyaqala ukuba ubaba ehambe ngayo ingunqu wazakhela yena ayifani nezinye imoto.
For the car that he first traveled in was known as Ingungu. It was not the same as other cars.
Kodwa njengamanje na leyo ngunqu leya ngazi noma siyashiswa noma ikhona kodwa into enganakiwe nje ngoba abantu kufanele ngabe bayigcina abazilutho ngayo.
But currently it is disowned. It was disowned for the people who were supposedly to look after it do not cherish history.
Ukube singabantu abafana nabelungu icansi ubaba mkhulu owayehlala kulo ngabe siyalazi.
If we were like the white people, we would know the grass mat that the prophet slept on.
Ngisho induku eyiphatha ngabe siyayazi ngabe ihlale kumuseum.
We would even know the stuff that he carried. It would be in a museum.
Kodwa yonke leyo nto ayikho.
But all those things are non-existent.
Ngisho imoto kwakuhamba ngayo ubaba inyanga yezulu ayisekho yantshinga ngazi noma ikuphi.
Even the car that Shembe the Third used, I do not know where it is. It was disowned or might have been thrown away.
Into abantu abamnyama bayaziyo ukuthi mayiqhamuka into beyibange befuna ubingeyabo hayi ukuthi beyibeke kumuseum.
What black people know is that whenever something appears amongst them, they should fight over it instead of archiving it.
Ubaba mkhulu wahamba isiziba wakhipha amatshe ayisithupha.
The prophet dug a well, and from that he took out 6 stones.
Lawo matshe abekhona isikhathi eside kodwa manje na ngenxa yalembango angikwazi ukuthatha.
The stones were still amongst us, but because of these factional fights, I do not know where they are now.
Ngisho leso siziba angazi ukuthi siphi kodwa yona into engabe sishumayela ngayo ngoba leso ziba sekhona and ziningi izinto ezenzeka kuwo.
I do not even know where that dam is, but I do know that it still exists.
Ziningi izinto ezenziwa baba mkhulu ezinobufakazi obuphathekayo kodwa ngenxa yokuphupha kwethu engekho.
There are many things that were done by the prophet which are tangible evidence, but because of our foolishness, we have not archived them or kept them safe.
Ngake ngahlala nomadlwa ingwenya owathathwa ingwenya ekuseni ngo9 yazi yamkhipha ngo4 ntambama ephila. Ngangikhuluma naye ngangifisa ukuthi lo muntu kube nemonument ngaye ngoba lento yenzeka yabonwa yibo bonke abantu.
I once interviewed Madlwa Ingwenya, who was taken by a crocodile from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the evening, and I have always wished that there was a monument of him, for it was something that happened and was seen by everyone.
Manje na ke engiqondile nengifuna nikwazi ukuthi Inkosi yaleli ibandla laManazaretha umprofeti izashembe ukuthula kube kuye uthumekile.
So what I want you to know is that the king of this faith system is the prophet Isaiah Shembe, peace be upon him.
Ngeshwa uma ngabe abantu ubafundisa ngendaba kaNkuluNkulu ngenxa yokuthi bakuzonda bagcina sebenza izinto isono bebhedise izinto ngenxa nje ukuthi bakuzonda.
Unfortunately, when you teach people something that is about God, they misinterpret that just because they hate you.
Ubaba ilanga owasifundisa ukuthi ubaba mkhulu Inkosi Yamanazaretha.
It is Shembe II that taught us that the prophet is the king of the Nazarites.
Kwisa ku page 193 wale ncwadi nansi inkulumo kaBaba ilanga.
In the 193rd page of this book, these are the words of Shembe II.
Ngesinye isikhathi wake wafika uNkulunkulu.
It once happened that God came,
Ngangiselinda kwaNongoma sinomhlangano khona.
and I was at Linda at Kwanongoma, and we were gathered there.
Ngabona abantu besodakeni bonke ababekhona enhlanganweni.
I saw all people who were in that gathering emerged in mud.
Nabefundisi nabashumayeli nabaphathi nenhlansuthi nabakhokheli namakhosikazi namantombazana bonke nje becwilile odakeni.
And that was the case for all the clergy and all the other congregants.
Babengakwazi ukuphuma kulolu daka.
And they were unable to come out of this mud.
Lulu khuni kunamanzi.
And it was difficult, and it was watery.
Le ndawo yayinomhlanga nodaka olubi.
This place had reeds and mud,
Inamanzi amaningi.
and it was overflowing with water,
Ibanda futhi.
and it was cold.
Kwakuyindawo embi kakhulu.
It was a terrible place.
Uma ngisacabanga ukuthi laba bantu ngizobakhipha kanjani lapha, ngabona uShembe qhamuka.
As I was thinking how I would save these people and take them out of this place, I then saw Shembe appearing.
Mayethi uShembe usho ubaba mkhulu.
And when he speaks about Shembe, he's referring to the prophet.
Akaze akhuluma lutho, welula isandla edonsa oseqaleni kodwa wabaleka. Wahlehla.
He said nothing. He just stretched out his hand to pull out one of them who was at the front, and that person went back.
Wabuyela lapho okunodaka oluningi khona.
And he went to a place where there was mud.
Wathi udonsa omunye naye kwaba yiso leso, bonke bahlehla baya lapho kunodaka oluningi khona.
And he tried to pull out somebody else, and likewise, it was the same case for everyone else, and they all reverted to a place that had more mud.
Akuphumanga noyedwa umuntu.
Not even one of them was saved or taken out.
Bonke bahlehla babuyela emuva.
They all went back.
Angisazi ukuthi ngathini enkosini.
I do not know what I said to the king.
Namuzithuba kuthini? Uthi baba ilanga angisazi ukuthi ngathini enkosini. Esho ubaba mkhulu.
And he says here that he said he does not recall what he said to the king.
Ngabona iphelelwa ngamandla ihlala phansi.
I saw the king sitting down because he was not motivated anymore.
Uthi ke ubaba ilanga kwakuludaka lokungcoliswa isono.
And that mud was as a result of sin.
Kodwa lapha bengithathe amazwi ukuthi ethu baba angisazi ukuthi ngathini enkosini.
But the words that I intended on quoting here were the words that say, I do not know what I said I do not recall what I said to the king.
Ngoba ubaba mkhulu wayeyinkosi noma useyinkosi namanje Yamanazaretha, lokho sikufundiswe ubaba ilanga.
Because the prophet is the king of the Nazarites till this day, and that has been taught to us by Shembe II.
Angazi noma laManazaretha esiwakhayo akulesi simo ubaba ilanga ukhuluma kuso noma cha.
I do not know whether the Nazarites that we have gathered here are in the same condition as these ones or not.
Kodwa ngiyangicelela uNkulunkulu ukuthi ningaba amaNazaretha asodakeni.
But I ask from God that you do not become Nazarites that are stuck in mud.
Ibani amaNazaretha asebungcweleni.
You should be holy.
Ngoba umani se ningamanazaretha asodakeni, umuntu ngamunye ukuphela kwakhe kuyinkinga.
For if you are Nazarites that are stuck in mud, your demise will be terrible.
Kosi kubusise Kosi kubusise Masibheke enkosini. uNkulunkulu wasekuphakameni, uNkulunkulu kaShembe. Sathunywa nguwe Nkosi ukuba siqhube umsebenzi wakho lapha emhlabeni. Sifundise abantu ngawe. Sifundisa abantu ukuthi ukhonzwa kanjani. Sifundise abantu ukuthi udunyiswa kanjani. Sicela uNkulunkulu wasekuphakameni ukuthi kube njalo. Abantu bayazi indaba yakho. Bazi Nkosi ukuthi alikho elinye ibandla ngaphandle kwebandla eliqhuba indlela yakho. Ibandla egcina umthetho wakho. Siyacela Nkosi kuba abantwana bakho bathandayo ungabashiyi. Ubavule izingqondo bebe nokuhlakanipha kwasezulwini. Balibone iqiniso lobukhona bakho. Siyabonga Nkosi ukuthi usigcinile. Uthe Nkosi makuvela izifo ezimbi owawushile emandulo ukuthi izosehlela. Kodwa thina Nkosi wasivikela kuzo. Siyabonga Nkosi ukuthi kuze kufikele isikhathi samanje akakho umuntu kuleli bandla osebabulalwa yi-coronavirus. Ngalokho Nkosi uyabonisa ukuthi konke Nkosi kusemandleni akho. Konke Nkosi kusothandweni lakho. Kodwa labo Nkosi abagcina umthetho wakho uba uyise kubo. Siyacela ke Nkosi kuba sigcine umthetho wakho sikufunde lokho. Ukuze Nkosi ube ubaba wethu ngokweqiniso. Busisa Nkosi bonke laba bantu Nkosi abeze lapha phambi kwakho. Nabe behluphekile Nkosi uphele ukuhlupheka. Nabagula Nkosi baphile. Nabahlushwa izitha Nkosi uzinqobe. Nemsebenzi Nkosi yabantu bakho ingapheli. Abantu bakho Nkosi bengalambi. Abantu Nkosi bakho bengahlupheki. Abantu bakho Nkosi bavikele kuzo zonke izitha. Sicela Nkosi kuba usifake emaphikweni akho ayingcwele. Siselapha emhlabeni. Noma Nkosi umphefumulo wethu usehlukana nenyama. Singafi siyethuneni. Kodwa Nkosi sisuke lapha Nkosi siye ezulwini. Lapho Nkosi besisebenzela khona. Busisa Nkosi abantwana bakho bathandayo. Busisa Nkosi abantwana bakho abakuthandile bakukhetha. Baba nethemba kuwe wedwa. Siyacela ke Nkosi kuba uzibonakalise kubo. Leli bandla lakho Nkosi ulikhulise ligcwale umhlaba wonke. Wonke umhlaba Nkosi wazi ukuthi wena nguwena wedwa uNkulunkulu. Nguwena wedwa umsindisi. Ngelakho Nkosi igama manje phathe. Amen.